Hello dolls and welcome back to another video. I feel like with all of these explaining 1960s videos, I am mostly talking about British and American fashion, and today I want to take a step into a new country and talk about the 1960s French fashion. France, and especially Paris, has always been the fashion capital of the world. But in the 1960s, the focus shifted to London, New York, and LA. However, Paris still remained one of the most fashionable cities, and there are many French women who were fashion icons back then and are still today. Today, I want to talk about women like Jane Birkin, Brigitte Bardot, and Catherine Deneuve, and their incredible style, and just the French fashion in general. So take a trip with me back to Paris in the 1960s and let me tell you about 1960s fashion in France. In the 1960s, French fashion was changing, but still the whole world was looking to Paris for fashion inspiration, where designers redefined elegance, pushing boundaries with daring modern silhouettes while preserving an effortless sophistication that led fashion. The decade marked by influence of visionary designers like Yves Saint Laurent, André Courrèges, and Pierre Cardin saw Parisian fashion evolve from classic refinement to avant-garde innovation. From the futuristic lines of space-age designs to the rebellious introduction of Le Smoking tuxedo suit, French style balanced tradition and modernity, capturing the spirit of a changing world. Icons like Brigitte Bardot, Françoise Hardy, Catherine Deneuve, and Jane Birkin embodied this new era, each bringing her own twist to French chic. Whether it was the seductive glamour of Brigitte Bardot or Jane Birkin's laid-back bohemian flair, these women set trends that influenced cinema, music, and everyday fashion around the globe. In the streets of Paris and on the world stage, 1960s French fashion became a celebration of freedom, individuality, and the timeless allure of Parisian style. In the streets of Paris and on the world stage, 1960s French fashion became a celebration of freedom, individuality, and the timeless allure of Parisian style. Parisian fashion had established itself as the pinnacle of style, elegance, and craftsmanship ever since the 17th century. Couturiers like Coco Chanel, Christian Dior, and Yves Saint Laurent helped cement the city's reputation by creating styles that combined refinement and innovation. Chanel's streamlined silhouettes and Dior's new look had already revolutionized fashion by the mid-20th century, setting standards for femininity, sophistication, and a certain effortless chic that became known as quintessentially French. In the 1960s, Paris continued to adapt modern trends while retaining its sense of polish and elegance. Key French designers such as Yves Saint Laurent and André Courrèges experimented with sleek, futuristic looks while keeping an aura of sophistication. Yves Saint Laurent's Le Tuxedo, for example, gave Paris a forward-thinking edge that was both bold and refined, while Courrèges embraced geometric shapes and clean lines, epitomizing chic, streamlined futurism. In the 1960s, London and Paris were defying the fashion world, yet their influence came from very different historical and stylistic traditions. Paris had long held the title as the world's fashion capital, grounded in centuries of style tradition, luxury, and elegance. But in the 1960s, London emerged as an electrifying fresh hub of youth culture, giving Paris its first real rival. While Paris maintained a stronghold on chic elegance, London became a canvas for youthful rebellion and self-expression. French fashion remained luxury-oriented and refined, presenting bold ideas within Polish frameworks. In contrast to that, London street fashion was vibrant, accessible, and fueled by the energy of the younger generation. Paris set the trends for high-end elegance, while London allowed everyday people to express themselves creatively, marking a new era of democratized fashion. Ultimately, the fashion rivalry between Paris and London in the 1960s symbolized a larger cultural shift. Paris represented tradition and luxury, while London embraced innovation and the modernity of the youth culture. Together, they created a fashion landscape that was eclectic, boundary-breaking, and unforgettable. I feel like this sums it up really well. Paris had this timeless classic elegance that definitely put its own spin on 1960s fashion, while a lot of the new trends came from London's Carnaby Street. London's fashion was young and exciting, and many adored the bright colors and bold patterns. The Parisian style was definitely a lot more traditional, but it started to incorporate those modern aspects like mini skirts and geometric prints. I think it is easiest to explain this in a little example. Black and white patterns were popular in both Paris and London in the 60s. While Paris loved the black and white trend too, they definitely had a more classic and traditional approach to it. A lot of stripes were popular, knitted button-down jackets with polka dots like the one that I'm wearing today. Those more classical approaches to this trend were more seen in Paris. I personally truly cannot choose between London and Paris as the fashion capital of the city, and I feel like while many would say that there was a rivalry in the relationship between the two cities and their fashion makers, I feel like it was more of a love story. One city got inspired by the other, put a twist on a certain style, and then the same thing happened with the other city and their styles. To me, these two cities kind of built a symbiotic relationship, making the most incredible fashion people had ever seen. The 1960s were a transformative decade for French fashion, blending timeless elegance with these new, bold and innovative trends. Paris, long regarded as the fashion capital of the entire world, continued to influence the global style in the 1960s, while still embracing new cultural and social shifts. As said, many trends that originated in Paris or London would later be taken on by the other city, while they would put their own spin on it. So let's talk about some of the most popular French styles of the 1960s. While haute couture was not exclusive to France, Paris was and remains the epicenter of this fashion movement. French designers continued to dominate the high fashion world, with houses like Dior, Chanel, and Givenchy producing collections that defined the era. In the 1960s, haute couture remained a symbol of sophistication and luxury, and its influence persisted not just in Paris but in global fashion. However, the level of prestige and craftsmanship associated with French couture during this time was unmatched by any other country. There was one trend that truly defined fashion in the 1960s in Paris. It was one of the most revolutionary fashion moments in the entire decade, and it was pretty much exclusive to French couture. Yves Saint Laurent's Le Smoking, introduced in 1966. The sharply tailored tuxedo suit, designed specifically for women, challenged traditional gender norms and helped establish a more androgynous approach to fashion. This groundbreaking design redefined evening wear for women, marking a moment in fashion history that was truly Parisian. While the space age style had a global impact, French designers like André Courrèges and Pierre Cardin took this trend to an entirely new level. I already made a video all about the space age fashion of the 1960s. I'm gonna link that here, but I quickly wanted to summarize this because it truly was an important aspect of 1960s French fashion. André Courrèges in particular became closely associated with space age fashion in the 1960s, creating minimalistic A-line dresses, futuristic jumpsuits, and metallic accessories that were distinctive to Paris. He used cutting-edge new materials like PVC and plastic, which gave his designs a modern and avant-garde feeling. This moment in Paris was seen as both a celebration of technological advancements and a statement of fashion forwardness. Space age fashion wasn't the typical French fashion of sophisticated and traditional glamour, but that made the trend even more popular. On the complete opposite of this style were the yeye girls and yeye fashion. The yeye movement emerged from France in the early 1960s and originally was a genre of pop music, but its impact extended to fashion. The yeye girl became an iconic representation of youthful, carefree French style. Artists like François Hardy, Sylvie Vartan, and France Gall embodied this look, often wearing simple youthful outfits such as shift dresses, high boots, and long, straight hair with a fringe. The yeye girl aesthetic was specific to France, drawing heavily from Parisian street style while maintaining a distinctly French coolness that wasn't replicated in other countries. I have also made a video all about the yeye girls before, and I'm just gonna link that here if you want to learn more. While Paris was a major trendsetter, other places made desirable fashion too. The French Riviera, with its glamorous lifestyle and Mediterranean setting, influenced fashion in a way that was unique to the region. Designers like Jean Patou and Pierre Balmain created resort collections that became synonymous with Riviera chic. This look included lightweight fabrics, striped nautical tops, wide-brimmed hats, and tailored swimwear. The Riviera look, with its relaxed yet elegant sensibility, was a style that was distinctly French, with celebrities like Brigitte Bardot and Jane Birkin further popularizing the sun-kissed, breezy aesthetic. While the mod movement was very much a British phenomenon, Paris added its own twist to the trend, focusing on chic, Polish takes on the more rebellious British style. French mod style was characterized by clean, sophisticated lines, with designers adapting the trend to reflect Parisian refinement. Just like in Great Britain, the mod look was truly popular among the youth in France. The French mod look often included sharp tailoring, colorful geometric patterns, and sleek bobbed haircuts, blending British inspiration with the Parisian desire for elegance and understated sophistication. Introduced by British designer Mary Quant, the miniskirt quickly became one of these new global fashion trends, and Paris was no exception. Several French designers embraced the trend, creating sleek, tailored versions that epitomized the youthful, modern Parisian chic. The miniskirt became a symbol of freedom and rebellion, signaling a breakaway from the more formal and conservative styles of the 1950s. While flats were gaining worldwide popularity in the 1960s, the French particularly embraced ballet flats and other flat footwear, creating a signature part of their fashion identity. Designers like Repetto and Chanel turned ballet flats into a symbol of French chic, offering them in various colorways and materials. The simplicity of the flat shoe paired with a shift dress or a skirt embodied the effortless elegance that became synonymous with Parisian style in the 60s. Ballet flats, often in patent leather or soft suede, became a chic and practical choice for women. At the same time, low-heeled boots, often in leather or suede, became essential for both everyday and evening looks. Coco Chanel's legacy, which had begun in the 1920s, continued to shape French fashion even in the 60s. Chanel's classic tweed suits, simple lines, and emphasis on comfort became deeply ingrained in the French fashion consciousness during the 1960s. Though she passed away in 1971, her influence was still deeply felt in Parisian fashion, with her streamlined aesthetic standing in contrast to the more experimental looks of the era. French women embraced her designs as timeless and elegant, forming a staple of their wardrobes. Another staple in French fashion in the 1960s was structured outerwear. For these pieces, designers focused on clean lines and refined tailoring. The double-breasted coat, often in wool or cashmere, became a chic winter essential. Capes and cape-like coats, often worn over dresses or suits, offered a dramatic, elegant silhouette that completed the minimalist styles of the 1960s. Soon the shift dress became a symbol of French modernity in the 1960s. With its simple, straight-cut silhouette, the shift dress was youthful, comfortable, and effortlessly chic. Often paired with flats or low heels, the shift dress was a breakaway from the more structured silhouettes designers had favored in the 1950s, emphasizing a more relaxed, forward-thinking approach to style. While the London shift dress was often characterized by bright colors and eclectic patterns, the French took a more laid-back approach to it with muted colors and classic patterns. Large, round sunglasses became a necessity in the wardrobe of a chic Parisian woman in the 1960s. This truly reflected how bold French fashion had gotten in the 1960s. These frames were often available in bold colors or with geometric shapes. And these statement accessories became an essential part of a well-rounded 1960s look, adding an air of mystery and glamour. In the 1960s, Paris gave birth to a new kind of it girl, who embodied the essential French combination of sophisticated rebellion and youthful glamour. Women like Françoise Hardy, Catherine Deneuve, and Jane Birkin, whose style would later become iconic in the late 1960s and 70s, were celebrated for their laid-back but refined look. Sure, similar it girls existed elsewhere, but these French girls set the tone for cool, effortless beauty that would define global style. Their influence on fashion, hair, and makeup created a distinctly Parisian identity for the era. Just like clothes are defying the fashion of places and decades, so are the popular makeup and hairstyles. So let's take a look at some makeup and hair looks that were favored among the Parisian women of the 1960s. The most significant aspect of 1960s makeup was its emphasis on the eyes. Inspired by the rising popularity of bold graphic looks, especially those seen in fashion photography and cinema, eyes became the focal point of makeup. This period saw the rise of a dramatic eye makeup, particularly in Parisian circles, as women embraced creativity and experimentation. The heavy use of mascara became essential for creating bold, defined lashes. Thick, voluminous lashes were a signature of the French 1960s look. False lashes were also popular, particularly for evening looks, and many French women embraced thick, full lashes associated with stars like Brigitte Bardot and François Hardy. The use of eyeliner was crucial to define the 1960s eye. French makeup artists, inspired by the mod and space age trends, often applied thick winged eyeliner on sometimes even both the upper and lower lash line. This bold, graphic style with dramatic lashes for maximum impact. The eyeliner was often drawn into a sharp cat-eye look, which became the hallmark of French beauty in the 1960s. During this time, eyeshadow was bold and beautiful, with pastel shades like baby blue, lavender, or a simple white being popular in the early 1960s. As the 1960s progressed, deeper shades like silvery metallics, grays, and stark whites became more common, especially in the avant-garde mod-influenced looks. The eyeshadow was often applied in bold angular lines that matched the precision of the eyeliner. A striking contrast to the bold eye makeup look was the use of pale foundation and a minimalistic base. This clean, fair complexion was part of the 1960s style, creating a youthful, almost doll-like appearance. Unlike the heavy, sculpted blushes of the previous decades, the 1960s look favored a more natural, understated blush. Rouge was often applied lightly to the apples of the cheeks for a soft, natural glow. Preferred shades were everything peachy and soft nudes and pinks. The lips were often kept understated, particularly when paired with the bold eye makeup look. French beauty icons during the time favored nudes and light pinks, complementing the soft, doll-like looks. Lip colors were muted, with shades of nude, beige, and pale pink dominating the scene. Matte lipstick became the go-to choice for many French women, and they often paired it with a slightly darker lip liner to define the edges. For a more glamorous evening look, red lipstick were still a classic choice, though the new shade was often more subdued than the brighter, more vivid red of the 1950s. The red lipsticks of the 1960s were more muted and often had a slightly orange or brick undertone. One of the most iconic makeup looks to come out of the 1960s France was Brigitte Bardot's bedroom eye makeup. This look became emblematic of French beauty in the 1960s. Her makeup often featured a thick winged eyeliner that extended outward, exaggerating the natural almond shape of her eyes. She used bold false lashes or multiple coats of mascara to create full, thick lashes. On her face, she used a soft, pale foundation with minimal blush and a nude or soft pink lip to keep the attention on her dramatic eyes. This look was feminine, sultry, and youthful, defining the image of French beauty for an entire generation. Brigitte Bardot is the inspiration behind my look for today. Everything from the jacket to the slight bouffant updo, we're going to talk about it in a second, to the makeup is inspired by her. Even the idea of putting kohl kajal on your waterline, like your lower lash line, was popularized by her in the 1960s. And while this isn't my usual makeup look, I have to say I really like it and I think it is truly beautiful. On the other end of French beauty were women like François Hardy, favoring a bohemian look. While Brigitte Bardot's look was more sultry and glamorous, François Hardy represented a more natural, understated version of 1960s French beauty. Her makeup was less dramatic, but still distinctly chic. François favored a more natural eye look with defined brows, soft mascara, and a subtle hint of eyeliner. Her eyelids were often lightly shadowed with soft neutral. She favored a natural shade of pink or beige for her lips, giving her a fresh, effortless beauty. Her cheeks were lightly flushed, emphasizing her youthful bohemian vibe. 1960s French hairstyles were just as iconic as the makeup of the decade, and they played a crucial role in defying the era's overall aesthetic. While in London, most women went either for a Twiggy or a Patty Boyd-inspired haircut, in Paris there was a lot more variety to choose from for the stylish women of the time. From the voluminous, bouffant-inspired style to sleek, minimalistic cuts that mirrored the mod and bohemian styles, let me tell you all about 1960s French hair. One of the most significant hairstyles of the 1960s all over the world was the beehive. This is a look that is rooted in the late 1950s, but it reached its peak in the early 1960s, with bands like the Ronettes wearing the style. While it was primarily associated with American pop culture, French women adopted this look, giving it their own elegant twist. The beehive in France had a slightly softer, more controlled look than its American counterpart, with less height and less structure overall. French women often went for smooth, glossy finishes, incorporating a lot of volume and sometimes even curls to add even more volume, particularly at the crown. The look was often polished and sophisticated, making it perfect for formal events. Especially Brigitte Bardot was known for her voluminous, messy bouffant hairstyle. Her version of the beehive involved voluminous curls at the crown and teased hair, paired with a loose, tousled look that became her signature. This carefree bedhead bouffant was seen as a symbol of rebellious femininity and youth. Her influence on French hairstyles cannot be overstated, especially when it came to the iconic Bardot bangs. This fringe became one of the defying styles of the 1960s in France. Her bangs were full and thick, often styled to fall just above the eyebrows. These bangs were paired with long, loose, voluminous hair that framed her face. The rest of her hair was often styled in big, bouncy curls or waves, adding to the romantic, playful look. Unlike the more sleek and polished bangs of the past, Brigitte's version of the fringe was intentionally messy, creating a look of effortless chic. The bangs were often teased to add volume, making the entire hairstyle appear voluminous and youthful. As said, this is kind of what I did. There will be a short where I share how I created this, but basically all I did was to tweeze all that I could out of my hair up top here and then just kind of like pull it back. She often wore this like very laid back hair, so I didn't curl my hair or anything because I feel like she just went with what she had going on, because this is a style that I saw her wear a lot in old pictures. While the voluminous long-haired looks dominated much of the 1960s in France, the pixie cut soon emerged as another bold, fashion-forward choice. This style was famously worn by actress Jean Seberg, and it truly represented a departure from classic traditional femininity of the time, embracing a more androgynous modern style. Inspired by the French New Wave, Jean Seberg's pixie cut was sleek, short, and boyish. The cut was minimalistic with a sharp, straight fringe, often left slightly tousled for a more natural, youthful effect. Seberg's pixie was a major influence on women who wanted to break from the more traditional, feminine styles of the past. The page boy haircut was another popular style in 1960s France, especially among women who wanted a more sleek, modern look without the extreme volume of a beehive. This hairstyle was characterized by smooth, shoulder-length hair that was often curled at the ends, creating a clean, polished appearance. In the late 1960s, the mod movement influenced French hair, bringing sharp geometric cuts and sleek, angular shapes to the forefront. The mod bob became a quintessential hairstyle of the late 1960s, particularly associated with the London mod scene, but adopted by many French women of the time. The mod bob featured sharp, angular lines, and the hair was often cut to a chin length or slightly longer, with the ends of your hair tightly tucked away. This created a smooth, symmetrical silhouette that many women favored. This hairstyle was minimalist in nature and paired well with the mod makeup look, which focused heavily on bold eyes and pale lips. Unlike the more voluminous styles of earlier decades, the mod bob was sleek and controlled, with little to no curl or volume. It was a sharp, modern look that reflected the era's shift towards clean and precise styles. By the late 1960s, as the countercultural movement grew, longer, freer hairstyles began emerging as well. Although this look was definitely more popular in the US and England, it still had an impact on French fashion, especially in the bohemian circles of Paris. The hair of French women who embraced this style often flowed loosely around their shoulders, sometimes styled with soft waves or curls. But in France, straight hair was truly popular. It represented a break from the more structured and polished looks of earlier decades. Women didn't want to sleep in curlers anymore. It was all about a low-maintenance, modern look. François Hardy and Jane Birkin became icons of the bohemian style, with their long flowing hair, often parted in the middle and worn in soft waves or straight. Their hairstyles combined natural beauty with an effortless Parisian cool, which was reflected in the growing popularity of the natural hair movement toward the end of the decade. Hair accessories played a crucial role in 1960s French hairstyles, helping to elevate or soften the look. Many women chose wide, fabric-covered headbands for both casual and formal looks. They could be worn with anything, a sleek bob or a voluminous beehive, and they added a little bit of extra chic and flair. The bohemian influence also brought with it the use of flowers and ribbons in the hair. This was especially popular among those who embraced a more laid-back, hippie-inspired aesthetic. Just like in London and the US, actresses and singers of the time were crucial to making fashion styles, and the French actresses and singers were no exception. Brigitte Bardot was known for her sultry yet effortlessly chic style. She popularized off-the-shoulder tops, fitted dresses, and messy, voluminous hair. Brigitte helped make the French Riviera style glamorous, inspiring countless fans around the world. With her sultry yet playful style, Brigitte became a global icon in the 1960s, but her particular brand of French chic was uniquely Parisian. She was often seen in gingham prints, making them popular all over the world, and she also was known for her signature hairstyle, the voluminous, messy, and tousled beehive, which further solidified her status as the epitome of French beauty and effortless glamour. While Brigitte's influence spread worldwide, her style was quintessentially French, combining flirtation with a casual elegance. Often dressed by Yves Saint Laurent, Catherine Deneuve's refined and elegant look exemplified classic French style in the 60s. Her roles in films like Belle du Jour highlighted Parisian sophistication and set trends in coats, A-line dresses, and low-heeled pumps. Yeye singer and fashion icon Françoise Hardy blended Parisian chic with bohemian style. Known for her straight-cut fringe, she often wore mini dresses, boots, and simple, well-tailored coats, creating a unique look that combined youthful modernity with French cool. Despite her British roots, Jane Birkin became a key figure in 1960s French fashion, embodying a laid-back bohemian style that contrasted with the era's polished elegance. After moving to Paris in the late 1960s, she introduced a fresh, eclectic attitude to French fashion, emphasizing simplicity and ease. Jane embraced mini dresses, A-line silhouettes, and casual denim, often pairing jeans with plain tees or button-down shirts. Her signature accessories included wicker basket bags, and she favored flats or low-heeled boots for a relaxed, practical look. Unlike other icons like Brigitte Bardot, Jane's style was androgynous and carefree, influencing designers like Yves Saint Laurent and becoming a muse to Serge Gainsbourg. Her natural beauty and eclectic wardrobe made her an icon of effortless Parisian chic. Jane's influence extended to her music and film roles, notable her duet with Gainsbourg, Je t'aime moi non plus, and her performance in films like La Piscine, where her blend of innocence and sensuality set a new archetype for the modern it girl. There is one final crucial aspect to the 1960s French style, a classic, popular, and truly sexy accessory that was seen in the hands of every 1960s French it girl: a cigarette. Cigarettes were seen as an emblem of coolness and intellectualism in France during the 1960s. The French had long been associated with a certain level of sophistication and style, and smoking was seen as part of that cultivated persona. The act of smoking became intertwined with a broader cultural narrative of rebellion against the conventional, as well as a symbol of modernity. For many French women, cigarettes were seen as a tool of liberation. Much like their counterparts in the 1920s, 1960s women were challenging societal norms, and smoking was part of that cultural shift. Women were asserting their independence, and smoking became one of the ways they visually represented this autonomy. It was also a mark of intellectual chic, seen in the works of the intellectuals and philosophers that dominated the French cultural landscape during this decade. Smoking, especially among women, became more than just a personal habit. It was a powerful symbol of style, independence, and sophistication. And it just embodied the spirit of the time. In French fashion, cigarettes were not just accessories, but part of the aura of French chic, contributing to the image of nonchalant elegance. While smoking in general was popular all over the world in the 1960s, French women arguably were the ones to make it seem stylish and sexy for everyone. Several French style icons of the 1960s became closely associated with smoking, further cementing its role in the fashion world. Brigitte Bardot was perhaps the most famous French actress to epitomize the connection between fashion and cigarettes. Her smoky-eyed, carefree glamour often included a cigarette dangling from her lip, further enhancing her image as a bold, sensual figure. Her iconic beach photos and casual looks paired with tousled hair, smoky makeup, and a cigarette became synonymous with a relaxed yet glamorous French style that was nothing less than effortlessly chic. Catherine Deneuve brought a more polished sophistication to the idea of smoking. Known for her roles in films like The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Belle de Jour, she poised an immaculate style, which often featured her holding a cigarette, contributing to her image as the epitome of cool French elegance. Her look embodied the cigarette chic aesthetic, impeccable high-fashion outfits combined with the understated yet powerful act of smoking. Though Jane Birkin's style was more casual and bohemian than some of her French contemporaries, she too was frequently photographed with a cigarette, contributing to her Parisian cool factor. Her minimalist, messy appeal was perfectly matched by the cigarette, which added to her carefree, rebellious, and fashionable vibe. In addition to the actresses and musicians popularizing smoking, the cigarette itself became a fashionable accessory in 1960s France. The packaging, the cigarette holder, and even the act of smoking itself were part of the overall Parisian look. Slim cigarette holders, especially those with long, elegant stems, became fashionable among French women. Especially in more formal settings, these holders added a layer of refinement and theatricality to the act of smoking, elevating it into an art form. Cigarette brands like Gauloises, which were distinctly French, also became part of the cultural identity. These brands, with their chic packaging and association with French intellectuals and artists, reinforced the connection between smoking and French style. The darker, more musky flavor of Gauloises, along with their rustic, artsy imagery, aligned perfectly with the bohemian intellectual ideas of 1960s France. The link between French fashion and smoking was particularly visible in 1960s French cinema, where smoking was often featured in iconic scenes that helped define the era's fashion. In films like La Dolce Vita from 1960 and Pierrot le Fou from 1965, smoking was presented as both glamorous and rebellious. Characters were often holding or smoking cigarettes in a carefully staged shot that emphasized the elegance and nonchalance of the act. Cigarettes in 1960s France were so much more than just a habit. They were woven into the very fabric of the era's fashion identity and cultural narrative. For French women, whether glamorous, intellectual, or bohemian, smoking represented freedom, sophistication, and style. From the silver screen icons to the streets of Paris, the cigarette became not just a prop, but an essential part of the cool, effortless elegance that defined French fashion in the 1960s. The 1960s French aesthetic had a profound influence on fashion and cinema, becoming a visual language that defined an entire generation. Directors like Jean-Luc Godard and François Truffaut captured the style in films that featured characters with minimalistic, edgy wardrobes. Films like Breathless and Contempt showcased Parisian fashion that felt both casual and sophisticated, mirroring the rebellious spirit of the French New Wave. The 1960s were a transformative decade for French fashion, marked by a blend of youthful rebellion, casual elegance, and refined sophistication. From the iconic couture houses of Paris to the streets where women like Brigitte Bardot, François Hardy, and Jane Birkin redefined meant to be stylish, French fashion during this period became synonymous with effortless chic and individuality. The era's influence extended far beyond clothing, shaping the cultural fabric of cinema, music, and art. Whether through Brigitte Bardot's voluminous hair and sultry femininity, François Hardy's bohemian flair, or Jane Birkin's laid-back androgynous cool, each woman brought a distinct energy to the Parisian aesthetics, creating a look that was both modern and timeless. By the end of the 1960s, French fashion had evolved into a dynamic fusion of avant-garde experimentation and classic elegance, setting the stage for the more liberated styles of the 1970s. Today, the bold yet refined sensibility of 1960s French fashion continues to influence global trends, reminding us that true style transcends time, trends, and borders. That is it for today's video. I loved going into French fashion. I feel like the 1960s were such an interesting time period for French fashion because it really started in the fashion houses era, the time where Coco Chanel, Christian Dior had their buildings on the streets and people could walk in and get tailored handmade clothes, and then towards the end of the decade, there was definitely a shift into a completely different style. So this truly was a really formative era for French fashion in general. I loved finding out about all these French trends. As said, I feel like when we talk about fashion in the 1960s, we often put our focus on London, New York, and LA, while Paris truly had their own wonderful thing going on, influencing everyone. As always, I have a Pinterest board linked down below with all the pictures that I use, in case there's something you want to take another look at and get inspired by. If you enjoyed the video, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and maybe even share it with a friend. It supports me, it supports the channel, and it would truly mean the world. I hope you have a beautiful day. Go out, enjoy the sunshine. Take yourself some time to focus on you and your mental health today, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye, dolls!